Good morning. Welcome to Sunday school. Good to be here today. The sun's shining. We're looking for rain tonight, and hopefully clouds will clear away tomorrow when we have our total eclipse occurring in the area. If you want to join me in the book of Daniel, chapter 2, I'm going to begin with verse 31. It's been a couple weeks. Wasn't here last Sunday because of Easter. My house has been hectic there, so this is going to be it's going to feel like mostly review. But I want to read about the image of Nebuchadnezzar in chapter 2. If you familiar, Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. He couldn't remember it, but he was troubled by it, and his wise men couldn't tell him what his dream was. But Daniel answered his prayer when he shows up and talks to him about his dream. And let me just read through this section a little bit, beginning with verse 31 in chapter 2. Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, meaning huge, tall, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, and his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet, that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, the gold, broken to pieces together, became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain which filled the whole earth. This is history. Not history. This is the future in a nutshell. There have been great world kingdoms symbolized by the different metal described as parts of this image. And there will be a day when Jesus will come back. He will set up his kingdom. He will destroy all earthly kingdoms. It says, and I've just understood what it said, that when the stone smote the image, they became like chaff. You know, when you thresh wheat, or you have little bits of debris that blows away, you can't find it. There's no trace of it anymore. When God takes over, when Jesus returns and sets up his kingdom, there will be a removal of everything earthly and of the world that we live in, as far as the sin-filled world today. It will be so far gone that it will not be remembered. Now, he goes on to describe things. I'm going to read 36 to 43. Excuse me. And so Daniel, after describing what the dream was that Nebuchadnezzar saw, he interprets it by saying, "This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings. For the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power and strength and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field, the fowls of the heaven, hath he given into thine hand, and hath made thee the ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold. And after thee shall arise another kingdom, inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall reign over, which shall bear rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, forasmuch as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things. And as iron that breaketh all these shall it break in pieces and bruise. And whereas thou sawest the feet and the toes, part of potter's clay, part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, forasmuch as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And in the days of these kings, I just want to say something. You know, the head of gold was present day for Daniel. The arms and breast of silver was the next kingdom that would come in power, which would be Medo-Persia. The belly and thighs of brass, or the belly of brass, the loins, was the representative of the Grecian kingdom. And then the legs of iron represents Rome. And when he gets down to the toes, that is future even for us today. Even though the kingdom of Rome was here in the early centuries after Christ, the toes represents a reforming of power in the old Roman Empire. And that's what he says in the days of these kings, the 10 toes. That's representative of a future world power made up of 10 kings. In the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. For as much as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it brake in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God hath made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter, and the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof sure. 10 toes. It's interesting to see numbers in the Bible and to see things that tie in like this. And we had started a couple weeks ago and read about the beast that arises out of the sea in Revelation chapter 13. And it had, was it 10 horns or 10 heads? I'd have to. But the number 10 is there. It's, yeah, I'll look at it. It's Revelation 13. I don't want to misquote. Verse 1. That's fine. I've got it. Thank you. I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise out of the sea, having 7 heads, that's right, and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns. And they relate to future kings, not necessarily world kingdoms, but individual kings. But the 10 horns there relate to the 10 toes of Nebuchadnezzar's image. And it reminded me, I mentioned earlier to someone here, 2 Samuel 21:20, in the days of David, 2 Samuel 21:20, there was a character they ran into. Page after page, let me see, 21:20. And there was yet a battle in Gath, where was a man of great stature, tall, that had on every hand 6 fingers, and on every foot 6 toes, 24 in number, and he also was born to the giant. I just remembered that Jonathan's father, Pastor Mike, or David Michael Pointer, he said, if you come up to a guy and he's 9'6", check his hands out. Count his fingers. If he's got 6 fingers on a hand, then he's probably a giant. That kind of humor just really sticks with me because it's true, and yet it makes a point, and it's very memorable. But typically, the people we know have 10 fingers, 10 toes, and Nebuchadnezzar saw an image that had 10 toes, and they're significant. That number is significant. In fact, let's go next to Daniel chapter 7. And I know we read these a couple weeks ago, but in case, Daniel 7, verses 1 through 8. And this was the vision that Daniel had that gave him more information than what he had just in the interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's image. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. David spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea. And four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse from another. The four beasts relate to the four parts of Nebuchadnezzar's great image of a statue. The first was like a lion, had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear. It raised itself up on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. And after this I beheld, and lo, another, like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. It had great iron teeth, relating to the Roman Empire. Even Nebuchadnezzar saw iron. It devoured and brake in pieces. And stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. And it had 10 horns, relating to the 10 toes. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them one little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. This chapter goes on for another 20 verses, farther than I'm ready to go today. But the 10 horns of the 4th beast, which is dreadful and terrible, that represents the old Roman Empire, the 10 horns relate to kings that will arise and be probably amalgamated together with at least some agreement, and this is future for us. Even though the Roman Empire has been gone for hundreds of years, there is a future revision, reconducting, or I can't even think of the right word, where it will be reassembled for a short time, a revision. In chapter 8, we also read verses 1 through 9. And in this chapter, there are 2 animals that are seen. They relate to the Greek Empire and the Roman Empire. So let me just read verses 1 through 9 here. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, even unto me Daniel, after that which appeared to me at the first. And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass, when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in a vision, I was by the river Ulai. Then I lifted up my eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns. The 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other. The higher came up last. I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will, and became great. And as I was considering, behold, a he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And he came to the ram which had 2 horns, which I saw, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran into him in the fury of his power. I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler, very strong hatred, moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and brake his two horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground, and stamped upon him. There was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great toward the south, and toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. These verses are just, they're defined in this chapter that the ram was the Medo-Persian Empire. It actually says that in verse 20. And verse 21 says that the second beast represents the kingdom, the kingdom of Greece. And the important thing that I want to build towards is Daniel sees the future, and he sees into our future where the creature we call the Antichrist will arise. And he arises out of one of the 10 horns of the 10 horns of the 4th beast mentioned in chapter 7. So we know it'll be out of the territory of the Roman Empire. It won't be, it's not going to be China or Russia. It's not going to be an enemy that we know today, or that we recognize today to be it. And chapter 9, or chapter 8 rather, says the vision focuses more on 2 kingdoms, and specifically Medo-Persia and then Greece. And the Grecian Empire was divided into 4 sections when the notable horn was broken in the vision. The notable horn represents the first king, King Alexander the Great. And when he died, the territory, the kingdom was split up into four divisions. And there was strife between those divisions. And I've got a history book somewhere that talks about each of the sections, But out of those 4 divisions of the Grecian Empire is where the Antichrist will come. So we have a more specific, focused view of where the Antichrist will come from. And that's basically the subject matter of these visions of Daniel. Daniel chapter 10 and chapter 11 continue the vision's interpretation. Chapter 11 has 45 verses, and it talks about this king fighting with this king, and then this will happen. And it's very, very complete and thorough, but nothing that I can do or want to get into today. What I want to do is, Daniel has these visions, and then in chapter 9 it changes from a vision that he has in Daniel chapter 9. I want to read verses 1 through 5 because Daniel's heart was moved when he read Scripture. If you read here with me in chapter 9 of Daniel, verses 1 through 5, he says, "In the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, of the seed of the Medes, which was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans." So this is after the Babylonian kingdom was conquered by the Medes and the Persians. And this is Darius was ruling in his first year, so it's early in that kingdom's authority over Daniel. "In the first year of his reign," verse 2, "I, Daniel, understood by books the number of the years whereof the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolations of Jerusalem. And I set my face unto the Lord God to seek by prayer and supplications, with fasting and sackcloth and ashes. And I prayed unto the Lord my God, and made my confession, and said, O Lord, the great and dreadful God, keeping the covenant and mercy to them that love him, and to them that keep his commandments, we have sinned, and have committed iniquity, and have done wickedly, and have rebelled even by departing from thy precepts and from thy judgments. I'm not going to take time to turn to it, but Jeremiah in chapter 25, verse 11, and in 29, verse 10 and 11, said that Jeremiah the prophet was telling his people, Babylon's going to conquer. Babylon's going to take over this land. You'll be carried into captivity. The captivity will last 70 years. Daniel was reading in Jeremiah. He saw what God said, and he believed it. He acted in faith. And his faith caused him to repent, to say, representing his nation as a priest. He was representing his people and saying, we're guilty. We brought this on ourselves. And he asking for God's forgiveness and to bring to fruition the promise that the captivity would come to an end. So with that in mind, jump ahead in this chapter to verse 17, Daniel 9:17. And we're going to read to the end of the chapter because this relates to the future. Now therefore, O our God, hear the prayer of thy servant and his supplications. This is prayer that I didn't read all the prayer that is listed there. But he's come down to this point. He says, and cause thy face to shine upon thy sanctuary that is desolate for the Lord's sake. O my God, incline thine ear and hear. Open thine eyes and behold our desolations, and the city which is called by thy name, for we do not present our supplications before thee for our righteousnesses, but for thy great mercies. O Lord, hear. O Lord, forgive. O Lord, hearken and do. Defer not for thine own sake, O my God, for thy city and thy people are called by thy name. And whilst I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplication before the Lord my God for the holy mountain of my God. Yea, whilst I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation. And he informed me and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I am now come forth to give thee skill and understanding. At the beginning of thy supplications the commandment came forth, and I am come to show thee, for thou art greatly beloved. Therefore understand the matter and consider the vision. The rest of this is all new information for Daniel. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people. Daniel was praying in reference to the 70 years that would be the length of the captivity. Gabriel says, let's talk about not just years, but weeks of years. 77s. And that's an understanding that can be backed up by other scripture. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgression and to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and seal up the vision and the prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. It's in 2 sections because one was the length of time to rebuild the temple, and the other is the continuation of time. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. So 7 weeks plus 62. 60 is 60. So 62 plus 7 is 69 weeks. So he's saying, God says, I'm going to deal with Israel for 490 years to end what needs to be done. Not counting the last 7, the 69 weeks would be 483 years. And verse 26 relates to the end of that period from Daniel's time when the temple was to be rebuilt to the coming of Messiah the Prince. It says, after the 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. This phrase here, the people of the prince that shall come, the people at that time that were when Jesus arrived, when Jesus was on the scene, when the Messiah came, it was the people of the Roman Empire. And the prince that shall come is the future Antichrist, the future ruler who would be related to the Roman Empire in some way. So that wording is important. The people of the prince that shall come, we would say, looking back, it was the Romans, will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Jerusalem was destroyed in AD 70. But the prince that shall come is referred to in verse 27. He shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. I'm just going to end by saying, when Jesus came into the triumphal entry into Jerusalem, and the Pharisees told him to tell your people to be quiet. They shouldn't be praising you like this. Jesus said, if they don't praise me, the rocks will cry out, because this is important. Let me end with Luke 19. A couple verses here. Won't read them all. It's time to end. Luke 19. Let's jump down to verse 39. From some of the Pharisees from among the multitude said unto him, Master, rebuke thy disciples. And he answered and said unto them, I tell you that if these should hold their peace, the stones would immediately cry out. And when he was come near, he beheld the city and wept over it, saying, If thou had known, even thou, at least in this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace. But now they are hid from thine eyes. For the days shall come upon thee, that thine enemies shall cast a trench about thee, and compass thee round, and keep thee in on every side, and shall lay thee even with the ground, and thy children with thee, and they shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation. You know, when the wise men came to Herod, said, where's the king going to be born? Where's the king that was to be born? He had people who went to scriptures and knew where Jesus was going to be born. The Jews had Daniel's prophecy. They should have known this year the Messiah would be on their property, would be in their city, in their towns. And they didn't. It's amazing. God doesn't